But first, the Murdaugh family was synonymous with the justice system in the low country of South Carolina. For close to a century, a string of Murdaughs sat as the head prosecutor, known as the solicitor. The family was held in high regard and wielded a lot of influence. And that's what makes the story of Alec Murdaugh even more shocking. Alec was a lawyer following in the tradition of his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. He was wealthy, powerful, and privileged. But now he sits in jail, charged with the execution-style murder of his wife Maggie and his son Paul. Today, Alec was back in court.
We've realized that this is a white-collar case that culminated with 2 murders.
And tonight, we are live from the Low Country with all the latest developments in the Murdaugh family murders.
I'm Vinny Politan. Great to have you with us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And this hour, we're going to take a trip to the Low Country of South Carolina and talk about the Murdaugh family murders. You know, here on Court TV, we cover a lot of cases that I would refer to as spousal murder cases. And you know, we've seen them many times, and there are some themes and similarities that run through most of them. A lot of times there's some sort of a love triangle. Somebody's cheating on somebody. Maybe they're about to get divorced, and all of a sudden one of them ends up dead, or one is caught cheating, or there's a life insurance policy. Whatever it is, we've seen that case many times here on Court TV. And while murder never makes sense, you kind of understand the motive of the killer in those cases. You know, I want to get divorced, or I don't want to be with my spouse, but I don't want to give my spouse half my money. Or I don't want to be with my spouse, but I don't want to give up my kids. And we've seen how that has played out through the years. Now, let's talk about this case, Alec Murdaugh. I mean, what we're talking about here, in my mind, is unthinkable. Unthinkable. I mean, you are murdering, these are the allegations, your wife, we've seen that, and your son at the same time? You're taking out like 2/3 of your family? This one's different. This is way different. And in those spousal murder cases, to me, it's, as a former prosecutor, I look at them, it's an easy story to tell to a jury. They get it. Jealousy, right? Passion, greed. Those are things that resonate and are very, very powerful in a courtroom. So when this case happened, and Alec Murdaugh was the one accused of murdering his wife and his son, like, why would you do that? I need an explanation. I mean, if I was prosecuting this case, I absolutely would need an explanation. We know motive, it's not an element of the crime. We don't have to prove it, but you do. But you do. If you are accusing a man of taking out his wife and his own son, those 12 folks in the box are going to be like, well, why did he do it? I mean, it's not that it makes sense, but there has to be some explanation as what would take someone to that place. And forensics are great, right? Forensics are great to prove a case. And that's how you dot your I's, you cross your T's, you put together a timeline, you put the killer at the scene. You know, those things jurors love. But in this case, with these allegations, as I said, you need more. You need a motive. You absolutely need it. It is, to me, it is required to convince these folks beyond any and all reasonable doubt that this man would do this. Wow. Well, today, inside the courtroom, the prosecutor explained their theory. What they're going to argue is the motive. Take a listen.
I think when this case started, a lot of people assumed that this was a murder case, and then a few months later, there was some white-collar thrown in there. But the reality is we have done this extensive investigation, state grand jury investigation. We've realized that this is a white-collar case that culminated with 2 murders. Every single year from 2011 to 2021, he stole money from clients. It is an unbroken chain because even though he was making 6 and sometimes 7 figures of legitimate income in his law practice, it was not enough to sustain the lifestyle that he had and the debts that he had. Even though he was borrowing millions of dollars from Palmetto State Bank, from his buddy Russell Lafitte, borrowing close to $1 million from his law partner, borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars from his father, borrowing hundreds of thousands of dollars from Russell Lafitte's father, having Russell Lafitte loan him close to $1 million from the Plyler money, for which he had Russell appointed conservator. It still wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to keep Alec Murdaugh's head above water. And it couldn't stop. It couldn't stop. I've detailed in the filing, and Your Honor is generally familiar with the state grand jury evidence of the 4 manners in which he was stealing money, including from his own family and his law firm. And he had been doing that for a long time. But one thing happened that caused the slow burn to finally heat up. And that was the boat case in February of 2019. In May of 2021, though, his staff, Mr. Murdaugh's staff, becomes suspicious because they get the expense check and they don't have the fee check. And they call up the other attorney's office and they say, "Where's the fees?" And initially, apparently, he was like, "Well, we gave it to Ellen." And then they're trying to figure it out and they can't get a satisfactory answer. And they go up and talk to financial staff and they're trying to get a straight answer and they can't get a straight answer. And one of the attorneys calls that other attorney and they can't seem to figure it out. Where are these fees? Where's $792,000 in fees? He's already gotten it. He's already spent it. And he doesn't have the means to pay it back. So what happens on June 10th? All of this is finally coming to a head. That morning, a PMPED staffer comes in the office at the direction of the partners and says, "Alec, I need an answer today. Where is that money? I need an answer today." And Alec is in his office working on the boat case because that hearing is scheduled for June 10th. And Judge Hall has made it very clear there's going to be no more continuances. And that's going to expose everything as well. And the only thing that stops the conversation about "I need an answer right now" is that Alec, unfortunately, gets a call that Mr. Randolph had gone into the hospital with a very poor prognosis. His father, who repeatedly had loaned him hundreds of thousands of dollars when he needed it. All of those are happening on this very day. It's a day of reckoning for him. The very day that Maggie and Paul were murdered. And what happens in the wake of that? What happens is the exact opposite happens. Everybody immediately rallies to his aid. Immediately, that hearing is canceled. It's not even rescheduled anytime soon. The PMPED people, it would be the last thing they're worried about is where these fees are. They don't care about that anymore. They're all rallying to his aid.
Unbelievable. When you think about these allegations, to take the heat off of himself, he kills his wife and his son. It's a day of reckoning where finally all this spending and this borrowing and stealing, it's the day where it's all going to come to a head. But then the heat's off because now he's a victim. His wife and son have been shot and killed. That's what they're going to argue to this jury. Wow, powerful stuff. Let's bring in Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson. Join us live tonight from the Low Country. Matt, great to see you. What was it like inside that courtroom? The first thing I noticed, though, is that Murdaugh, he looks a lot different than last time.
Yeah, he has more hair. Hi, nice to see you, Vinny. Happy Friday. and, a lot more confident, had the glasses on, had a notebook, was, conversing with the other attorneys. I thought at one point, man, he was going to stand up and yell objection, right? Look at him right there. Such confidence in the courtroom today, knowing that all eyes are on him as he walked in. That's right, he was not shackled today. He was unshackled, did not have any handcuffs. That was a big difference and also a big win for this defense team, because they are arguing that the potential jury pool could see him and that could, sway someone's opinion of him. Of course, he's cloaked in the presumption of innocence at this point in time. So, but the state didn't fight it. So he will, whenever he's in court, not have handcuffs or shackles. So I noticed him, taking a lot of notes, conversing with his attorneys. During the breaks, there was moments of levity. He was actually smiling, pointing to things, talking to people out in the gallery that were part of his team. That was different. That was very different than what we've seen him before, because I feel like during the charges and that charge hearing where they went very old school in South Carolina, I'd like to be tried by jury and by God, or whatever he said during that, he was kind of robotic. And it was very different, especially because he had the shaved head. He wasn't wearing the sport jacket. Today, he looked more professional, taking it more seriously. But also, again, I have to point out that he appeared to be part of a legal team. He was very much, it was kind of eerie, Vinny.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, an incredible difference. And I think the word that you said that really struck me too was the confidence. There's a confidence that you see in him, and I'm wondering how that will play in front of a jury, because many times defendants look scared, they look guilty, they look awkward. He looks at home and extremely comfortable. Amazing difference. All right, let's talk about some forensics. His shirt. Did that come up today, whether there's blood on it, there isn't blood on it? Will he be allowed to talk about the blood? What did we hear?
So that's going to be one of the big points that connects him to the crimes, right? If you are close to someone and you fire a weapon, there's going to be a lot of blood spatter on you that kind of just reflects onto you and sprays you. That's what the defense is saying. And they were saying, well, there wasn't really a whole lot of that in the state's testing of the shirt that he was wearing when he reported the two murders that night. So there was two tests, and the defense is saying that the second test and the second report suggests that there is more than 100 particles of blood spatter on him, but there was some sort of a hidden first test that they didn't know about that showed no DNA of Paul and no human blood. But they say that the scientists that did all of the testing, all of the chemical testing, did it wrong, damaged the shirt. They can't do their own tests. And so that damaging report should be thrown out. Here's more of what he had to say in court.
For our experts to be able to analyze whether or not, this is voodoo science or whether this is the real thing.
Now, Judge Clifton Newman, who we know from the mistaken rideshare murder case that we covered here on Court TV, he didn't make any ruling on that just yet. He said that there hasn't been enough time to review it. There hasn't been enough time for the defense, and then the prosecution is going to have until the end of the year to do a counter rebuttal. He also talked about the bill of particulars that led to the state kind of showing their hand. Basically, their opening argument as to what the motive will be in this case. He said that the bill of particulars is very old-fashioned. It really isn't the law here in South Carolina, so that might be a moot point, is what he said. That was pretty interesting in its own right.
So were any actual decisions made? Because this trial is like 6 weeks away. This is one of the first big ones of 2023.
So no decisions with any of the motions. No decisions today in any of that. But the one decision that was made came from the judge himself after seeing some of the news media reporting on the legacy of this family and the fact that this trial is going to take place in a courthouse where the Murdaugh family has an oil painting hanging of Buster, his great-grandfather. That's the painting right there. The judge, Clifton Newman, says that painting is going to be taken down in January when this trial gets underway. It's not going to be hanging over his shoulder, whether that's good or bad.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, you know, whether that would help him, hurt him, but Buster will be gone anyway. All right. What a day.
Buster.
Yeah. What a day, though. I mean, this was something to really hear the prosecutor lay out what almost sounded like an opening statement in a trial to get to the heart of what they believed was behind all of this. Matt Johnson, live tonight in South Carolina in the Low Country. Get yourself some baked oysters.
Okay, thanks for the suggestions. I don't think that's on the room service menu.
All right. Well, maybe you got to head into town. Matt Johnson, be careful. All right. Let's bring in our guest. Joining me tonight in Columbia, South Carolina, the attorney for one of the Murdaugh victims, Joe McCullough, is with us. Also in Columbia, South Carolina, criminal defense attorney Lori Murray. And in Port Royal, South Carolina, criminal defense attorney, longtime acquaintance of Alex Murdaugh, Jared Newman is back with us. Great to see everyone tonight. Now, I think we have like a 3-second delay with Lori, so when I ask her a question, everyone might just have to wait an extra second. Jared, let me start with you, though. Just the appearance of Alex Murdaugh in that courtroom today. What did you think of the way he looked, the way he handled himself, and how do you think that would play in front of a jury of his peers?
Well, I mean, obviously during the trial, he wouldn't be shackled. He's definitely getting special treatment. I'd have a judge look at me with 3 eyes if I asked one of my little drug trafficking clients if they could appear in their street clothes without shackles for a motion. But, you know, it's hard to say, yeah, he looked confident. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to build up. We're going to win. We look confident.
Joe McCullough, your thoughts, your reaction to how he looked today. Just, I mean, it was so different than last time. Last time he looked awkward, he looked scared, he looked a little pale. He's got his color back, he's got his hair back, he's got a little swag back, a little swagger back in that courtroom.
Well, we trial lawyers all have a script for our clients. It includes looking confident, looking concerned. It does not include having an animated, light conversation with counsel or paralegals. So, I mean, I suspect that after the defense sees this, his performance today or his actions today, that they're going to tell him, you know, let's not yuck it up in front of the jury, because that's a bunch of eyeballs watching every move the accused makes during a trial.
All right, Lori.
And their inferences.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lori, let's dive into this opening statement, really, that we heard from the prosecutor today, laying out this motive. How do you think that motive plays down there in the Low Country? That the heat was on, he was going to have to come up with some money to take the heat off. He becomes a victim by murdering his son and his wife, and it's like, oh my goodness, yeah, don't ask me for the money now. I'm trying to deal with this horrific loss.
Well, I think that, first of all, my mom is going to think that you put me on a delay so that I wouldn't use bad words. But the statement that he gave, in my opinion, was more like a closing argument versus an opening statement. But people here have been looking for a motive. What could make someone kill their wife and child, more specifically their child? And there are very few things that we can point to, and I think that we've been speculating for a while that it has been a financial motive. So to hear the government lay it out like that kind of gives credence to what everybody around here has been thinking, and especially to hear more detail about it, to hear that he has been stealing money every year since 2000, I think it was 2011. I think that they are definitely got a good motive there.
Let's take a listen to Creighton Waters, the prosecutor, again today, talking about what happened in September of 2021.
within a couple of hours of that conversation with his best friend confronting him about the $192,000, Alec is the victim on the side of the road. And instantly everybody rallies to his aid again. Accountability's coming on him, and suddenly there's a gunshot and he's a victim again. And everybody rushes to his aid again, except this time it doesn't take long for people to figure out that something's not right here.
Jared, what are your thoughts about this? This is the second, after his wife and son are shot and killed, there's a shooting where he gets shot in the head and miraculously survives on the side of the road. And the prosecutor is saying that's the same day that his friend, his best friend, is asking him to pay back $192,000.
That first one I'll give him. That sounds like a poorly planned, staged suicide that was not going to be a suicide. I do not buy the prosecution's case. I don't know how they're going to prove it, what the motive is. I still think this is a three-way domestic violent crime.
And let me tell you, Jared, if the jury's not buying that motive, the prosecutor could have some trouble here. You know, I'm a former prosecutor. You guys know when you're in a courtroom, the prosecutor's carrying that burden on their back. They've got to prove it all. All right, our guests are staying with us. We're going to talk more about this, obviously, plus coming up in the next hour.
Little Athena Strand was at her dad's house when a FedEx driver came by with a package. It was a Christmas gift for Athena, but it was a present she would never open because Athena was abducted and murdered. And police say the FedEx driver confessed to it. Tonight, we take a look at the confession. Will it keep him off or put him on death row?
The joy Athena gave her family and the joy she felt on Christmas is something we will never feel with her again.
A former police officer on trial for murder after shooting a woman in her mother's home.
A place she should have been safe.
Human life is a precious thing and should not have been taken from Miss Jefferson.
Put your hands up, show me your hands.
This is a tough and tragic event.
Now his fate will rest in the hands of a jury.
The killed while babysitting trial. Live coverage continues Monday morning at 9/8 Central on Court TV.
My asthma felt anything but normal. A blood test helped show my asthma is driven by eosinophils, which Nucala helps reduce.
Nucala is a once-monthly add-on injection for severe eosinophilic asthma. Nucala is not for sudden breathing problems. Allergic reactions can occur. Get help right away for swelling of face, mouth, tongue, or trouble breathing. Infections that can cause shingles have occurred. Don't stop steroids unless told by your doctor. Tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection. May cause headache, injection site reactions, back pain, and fatigue.
Ask your asthma specialist about a new normal with Nucala.
This is exactly why we chose leaf filter. Before leaf filter, our gutters would get so clogged.
Tree limbs, bird nests.
Our house is 2 stories tall. Getting up to these gutters is very dangerous.
We always hired somebody to clean these, and that was very expensive.
Leaf filter was a lifesaver.
When the salesman came over and showed us how they work, gave us interest-free financing, and the price was right, it was a no-brainer.
The leaf filter installation process was so simple and easy.
They got our entire 4,000 square foot house all fitted out and installed in less than a day. And we noticed the difference right away.
Now, all these gutters are actually doing what they're supposed to do.
Our downspouts flow freely now. I don't have to worry about climbing up the ladder.
My home is better protected.
Their whole process was so simple. I'm saving a ton of money, and it's only increased the value to my home.
Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or go to getleaffilter.com for your free gutter inspection and estimate. Call or log on today and save 15%.
There's nothing like volunteering at the fire department.
There's nothing like hitting the waves.
But with my moderate to severe eczema, it hasn't always been easy.
Since my skin was so irritated and itchy.
And even worse with all my gear on.
Now, I'm staying ahead of my eczema.
There's a power inside all of us to live our passion. And Dupixent works on the inside to help heal your skin from within. It helps block a key source of inflammation inside the body that can cause eczema. So adults can have long-lasting, clearer skin and fast itch relief. Serious allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Tell your doctor about new or worsening eye problems such as eye pain or vision changes, including blurred vision, joint aches and pain, or a parasitic infection. Don't change or stop asthma medicines without talking to your doctor.
Healing from within is a powerful thing.
Ask your eczema specialist how Dupixent can help heal your skin from within.
Shop Michael's today for our lowest prices of the holiday season. Get 70% off a variety of frames, strong beads, and more. Plus, for epic savings on everything you need for every way you celebrate. Hurry in and get our best prices on thousands of items. Sale ends Sunday.
Show the world what it means to be a fan at Fanatics.com. The largest assortment of officially licensed college fan gear from more than 500 colleges. Shop now and get today's special offer. Fanatics.com. Officially licensed everything.
Get 20% off during Manscaped.com's holiday sale. Find the perfect present for that special someone at Manscaped.com.
On the night of the murder, they took from Mr. Murdaugh his shirt, his shorts, and his shoes. They ran a series of tests on those items and found a preliminary test indicating the presence of blood, and they cut out pieces and did DNA testing on those. There is some of the area which would become relevant in this blood spatter. It is clear, two things are clear. One is that one of those spots of blood spatter was negative for Paul Murdaugh's DNA. Number two, the test run by SWED, which we did not get until a couple, 3 weeks ago, indicated no presence of blood, of human blood, which if you're going to have somebody testify that there's blood spatter, I think part of that is there needs to be some blood.
Big issue here, talking about the shirt that Alec Murdaugh was wearing the day that his wife and son were shot and killed. Is there or isn't there blood spatter on it? Depends upon which report you're looking at. It's a really confusing issue. Let's listen to more to Alec Murdaugh's attorney, because there's an initial report where it says there's no blood. Then there's a second report by the state expert saying there is blood. But now the shirt's been tested so much it's destroyed that the defense can't test it themselves. So which report? What is the jury going to hear? Let's listen.
I mean, Your Honor, this was leaked to the press a year ago that Al Murdaugh had Paul Murdaugh blood spatter, was the shooter because he had blood spatter. That, first of all, SWED will testify there's no blood. So I don't know any have blood spatter. Number two, the DNA spot would exclude Paul. Exclude. And number three, we believe the forensics is going to show that whoever shot Paul Murdaugh and basically blew his head off would be covered in blood, not just spattered.
All right, let's bring our guests back in. Joe McCullough, Lori Murray, Jared Newman with us, all in South Carolina. Joe, let me ask you, how important is the blood spatter in this case, specifically that white shirt that Alec Murdaugh was wearing? It seems like it's not clear-cut for prosecutors to necessarily be able to say, hey, just look at the blood, there it is.
Well, it's huge. As Dick said, a year ago, a leak occurred which suggested that this blood spatter was a significant piece of evidence that could only have occurred if Alec was at the scene of the murder in close proximity. What Dick accomplished is three things today, in addition to controlling the tempo. He got to talk about the sinister nature of this investigation, and he put a black hat on SLED. He got to suggest that either they're incompetent or something worse, and he got to talk about it to the press, to the public, and his options are open whether he moves to suppress or not, and he got the prosecution to step away, to basically say, well, we weren't involved at that point. If something happened bad, that was SLED. That's on SLED. And that's huge.
Yeah, Lori, this is a potential Achilles heel for prosecutors. You know, you would expect someone wearing a white shirt who is shooting and killing two people to perhaps have a little blood on there, but if this is not a clear-cut case, how much of an obstacle will it be to prove this thing beyond a reasonable doubt?
Well, I think we also have the problem with the expert witness that was brought up during the hearing today, that at one point he said there was no blood spatter, and then he turned around after a photoshopped picture of the shirt and said that there was blood spatter now. So he created evidence based on a photo. But the only other thing that I keep thinking of, the other piece of evidence that I remember from a different hearing, a different release of information, was that they found this blue rain jacket. And my thought was always, was there blood spatter on that? Had that been washed? Had that been cleaned? Had that been disposed of? So it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem that the shirt is destroyed. It's a huge problem that their expert has, their own expert can't really say that there was blood spatter there, but I'm still wondering about the blue jacket.
Jared Newman, you know, there are expectations these days because of programs like Forensic Files, CSI, that there's going to be this forensic evidence that is going to prove it. It's going to put the killer right there. How important is it in this case?
Well, it's extremely important. The one thing I haven't heard, they excluded Paul Murdaugh. What about Maggie Murdaugh? Is it XY DNA? I have my theory. I think Alex was standing next to Maggie when she was shot. But, I don't have all the evidence. I just know as a former detective, it's very hard to kill two people, especially with two different weapons.
Yeah, that's another big part. I mean, I could see the defense riding that fact throughout this trial. Why two different weapons? Why? But is there anyone else on the radar down there, Joe McCullough? Anyone else on the radar who would have wanted to murder Maggie and Paul?
Well, there's no one announced, and SLED has been at that pretty extensively, as has the defense team, who several months ago announced they were hot on the trail of a real suspect. We didn't hear any more about that, but to believe that it's a stretch, I guess, to believe that Alec Murdaugh planned this in such a way as to wear a raincoat, to kill them and use two guns by himself, and all of that is a lot to swallow for your average jury, and this is all going to take place in the Low Country, where it will make jury selection a fascinating exercise. So,
absolutely.
I don't know what you do with all of this evidence, but I think the prosecution took the bait, I think, in an unforced error today by responding to the bill of particulars, playing out the motives. They should have not done that, in my opinion. They should have sat on that. Their opening argument is there's only one thing worse than coming home and finding your family murdered, and that's if you did it. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to prove that.
Love that. Lori, as we look at this case, and 6 weeks away, this thing is going to happen, does the defense need an alternative theory, like someone else who, for whatever reason, would want to harm the Murdaugh family?
I used to would have said yes to that question, but then OJ came along. And juries nowadays have been acquitting just based on reasonable doubt, which is good because that's what our judicial system is about, reasonable doubt. So I don't think they have to have an alternative killer or reason for their deaths. I think all they have to show is there's reasonable doubt that Alec Murdaugh was the one who pulled the trigger.
This is going to be some case. Joe McCullough, Lori Murray, Jared Newman on this Friday night. We appreciate your time. We'll be speaking a lot, I'm sure, as we get closer and closer to those opening statements. When we come back, folks, we can continue diving into this from a different angle. We're going to bring